Hello you guys, welcome to day 4 in palette week, where every single day for 7 straight days I am posting some sort of palette themed content. And today I am doing my 2024 version of the if I could only keep one palette tag. I don't know if this is a tag or not, but I've been doing this for a couple of years now. In my March palette week I did if I had to declutter one, and now we're doing if I could only keep one. So I'll leave my palette playlist linked in the description box down below, and I will try and remember to link my most recent if I had to declutter one in case you missed that and you're interested in checking it out. But today we are talking about the one palette I would keep from each eyeshadow brand that I own at least 3 palettes from. I decided to do 3 instead of 2 just because I thought it made it a little bit more fun and also whittled down just a little bit the amount of palettes that I'm sharing in today's video. But if you're interested in seeing which palette I would keep, I could only keep one from those brands, stay tuned. For if you have yet to subscribe to my channel and you like project painting content, palette themed content, or just chit-chatting about makeup, I'd love for you to consider subscribing before moving on. And other than that, let's jump into the video. Okay, I took my jacket off because I was way too hot, and my air started to turn on right as I was like wrapping up that intro, and so I turned my air off so it wasn't so loud. But I'm like, I'm gonna be hot. I should put my hair up, but anyway. Okay. My palettes are all just literally sitting in stacks by brand on my counter. So this is really in no particular order other than just what stacks I'm grabbing. Oh, I just sometimes hate the way my hair lays just down and straight, but we're gonna roll with it. Okay, let's start with Rowan. My Rowan quads. This is so difficult because I absolutely love and adore my Rowan quads so much. So I have the 75 degrees quad, which I am currently trying to see how much of this quad I can use up in a year. It's going in my Rolling Project 10 pan. It is my oldest of the 3 quads that I have and the one that made me fall in love the most. I also would love to just purchase the rest of the Rowan quads. Then we have the Rowan Mood Forever quad, which is the newest quad to my collection. So beautiful. I really love this shade right here. It's this really beautiful kind of like silvery taupey sort of shade with like blue glitter running throughout. It is so beautiful. I also love both of these shades right here. This is the only shade in this palette that I just don't love the most, but I absolutely love and adore this quad as well. And then I think if I could only keep one, it would definitely be between the 1111 and Mood Forever, and I think I'm gonna go 1111. I actually had to repurchase this palette because my previous one my daughter destroyed, and I loved it so much I had to repurchase it. I adore this shade right here. It's this really beautiful kind of cool toned silvery pink sort of shade, again with kind of blue sparkle running throughout it, and I just absolutely love a shade like that. And then there's this really beautiful, again, kind of like silvery grayish blue shade, and both of these are really beautiful as well. This shade is a little bit of like a pop of warmth if you're wanting something a little bit more warm, and then the rest of the shades are cool. It's such a beautiful palette. I couldn't recommend the Rowan quads enough. I'm not someone who even wears cream shadow all that much, although I will say I don't think that these palettes are going to be for everyone, but I personally love them, and if I could only keep one I would definitely be crying, but it would be the 1111 quad from Rowan. Okay, then we have my Dose of Colors palettes, and I have 2 of the 5 pans. I have the Baked Browns, which looks like this. I have completed this shade right here, was like a lid setting shade. Then I have Sassy Siennas, which looks like this. And we all know if I could only keep one palette from Dose of Colors, it's gonna be my Friendcation, because this is my go-to country concert palette. I think by the time that this video goes up, I'll have already gone to this concert. But I have the Morgan Wallen concert coming up, and I like hesitate to say that because Morgan Wallen is just like not a good person. And I do recognize that. I wish his music wasn't so good, but I am going to the Morgan Wallen concert. If you're gonna hate me for that, I get it. He's not a good person. I do get it. But are we busting? Oh my gosh, we saw that happen, right?
Are we busting?
And now there's, oh, that's gonna gonna be like just not fun to clean up at all. Okay, I will say that's the second shade. I had to smush this shade back in too. I didn't actually have to smush this blue shade in, but it's literally all over my dirty floor, so there's no saving that shade. Can I like smush this last remaining little bit in so that doesn't happen? That is so sad, especially because I've been like loving blues more. But what I was gonna say, oh, I'm actually so sad. As I swatch that, I'm like, not that I've like reached for this shade much in its lifetime, but look how freaking beautiful that is. Anyway, will I wear this to the Morgan Wallen concert? Who's to say? But this is typically, when I have a country concert to go to, this is typically the palette that I'm reaching for. So if I could only keep one, it would be my friend Katia palette from Dose of Colors. All right, next up we have Aether Beauty. I have two quads from Aether. I have the Amartine Mini Crystal as well as the Rose Quartz. Then I have the large Rose Quartz quad, which looks like this. My sister actually ended up giving this to me. And if I could only keep one from Aether, I actually would pick the Summer Solstice palette. And what's funny about this is I almost decluttered this palette, and then I decided to give it one more chance to use it No Pan Left Behind style. I actually rolled it into a project to No Pan Left Behind, wasn't feeling encouraged or inspired by it, said that I was going to declutter it, and then rolled it back into that project and was like, no, I'm going to give it a chance. And I loved the looks that I created with this eyeshadow palette. So if I could only keep one from Aether, it would be this palette right here. I feel like I've heard rumblings that Aether is coming back, which is really exciting. I'll be excited to see what their like rebrand or like reopening of their brand is like. I'm excited for it. All right, next up we have What's Up Beauty, and this is gonna be so difficult. I can't remember which one I said I would declutter if I had to declutter one. So I have the Geodes palette, which is this one right here. First of all, let me say, I think What's Up Beauty is one of the most underrated indie brands. They have incredible palettes as well as incredible other makeup. I really like their highlighters. I really like their lipsticks. And okay, so here we have the Geodes palette. I love this palette because I love the shade Peridot. I also love the shade Citrine right here for an inner corner highlight. We have some really, like, this is a beautiful shade. This is a beautiful shade. So that beautiful palette. Then we have the Desert Monsoon palette. And this is another really beautiful palette. I will say this one probably has less shades that I'm like super attached to, but the shade Downpour I love as a nail polish. I also think the shade Sun is this really beautiful kind of gold green sort of shade. And then I also really like Desert Rose and Succulent. And then we have the Dragon Eye palette, which is just such a stunning eyeshadow palette as well. I actually have the shade Fly on the inner corner right now. And okay, what's tough about this is like I love the special shades in this palette the most, although I really do love the shade Citrine, that yellow for an inner corner highlight. But then this has the like least, I'm gonna say least, no, I was gonna say least wearable mattes. I'm like, I like the matte color selection a little bit better. Like in the Desert Monsoon palette, I'm like, we've just got neutrals, which I always love to have neutrals. But I think if I could only keep one, it would be, oh, it would be so difficult because I love all three of my What's Up Beauty palettes. But it would be the Dragon Eye palette, just because I love the special shades in this one. The shade, actually, honestly, just every special shade in this palette, love so much. So, ooh, I would also be crying if I had to declutter all but one of my What's Up Beauty palettes, but if I could only keep one, it would be the Dragon Eye palette. Okay, next we're moving on to Dieron Cosmetics, and from Dieron I have the, I think I have all three of their palettes. So I have the Gloomy Gardens palette, which is this palette right here, and admittedly this is the only palette that I've used every single shade in. I also have the Moth and Moon palette, and I actually have this shade right here out of the Moth and Moon all over my lid, and it is such a beautiful shade. And then most recently, I picked up their little cute 6-pan palette. This is in the shade Dewdrop, or sorry, this is the Dewdrops eyeshadow palette. This is so freaking cute. And I have not yet used every single shade in this palette. This is very new. I'm actually pre-filming this pretty far in advance, so I really haven't reached for this. But I actually think if I could only keep one, I would keep this cute little 6-pan palette. And the reason being is when I look into my other two Dieron palettes, I'm very excited to reach for these special shades because they make incredible special shades. But when it comes to the actual mattes, I'm just not as excited about the mattes, or I feel a little bit like confused by the color story. It might not be as versatile as I typically like to have. And with the Dewdrop palette, I could just pair this with really any palette in my collection and just use these as the lid toppers. And sometimes I like to have just like a cute little pocket palette for like lid topper shades. So I actually think I would keep this cute little Dewdrops palette. I think it's the cutest little thing. So this would be the one I would keep from Dieron. And I don't know if I'm saying their brand name correctly. I hope I am. Okay, this is actually also so difficult. We have ABH, and I only have 3 palettes from ABH, which is crazy because I used to have like every ABH palette. So we have the Cosmos palette, which I know wasn't everyone's favorite, but I actually really loved this palette. I thought it was so beautiful. Then we have the Nuevo palette, which looks like this. Also really, really beautiful. Kind of an interesting color story, but also just really fun. I like the pop of lavender in this. And then we have my all-time favorite Jackie palette, like all-time favorite Jackie palette, definitely. Or sorry, ABH palette. This is the Jackie palette. I have multiple pans in this palette, and I have like some go-to looks that if I just want to look pretty but don't want to really think about it, or don't want to like chance whether or not my look is going to come together, I have some looks that I create with this that I'm always just comfortable creating. It is going to be between Jackie and Cosmos. The tough thing is I really like pretty much every single shade in the Cosmos palette, even the shade Galaxy, which I know might not be everyone's cup of tea. I really do like all of the shades in the Cosmos palette. And with the Jackie palette, like I really could just do without these shades. Like if it was just an 8 pan with these 6 and these 2, it really wouldn't be a question. Man, this one is so tough. I love the shade Zam, I love the shade Sponsored, and I love my brown mattes in this one. But I also have brown mattes that I do love in this one as well. This one has this shade for a fun green. I actually think, I think if I could only keep one, I'm going with ABH Cosmo. I can't remember if this is what I went with last year too. I literally can't remember. And it's fun not to look back so that my answers like aren't swayed by like what I went with last year. Like preferences can change. And this palette is just truly getting like old. So I'm going with ABH Cosmos if I can only pick one ABH palette to keep. All right, I've swapped out my palettes for more stacks. Okay, next up we have my Melt Cosmetics palettes. I have the Rust palette. I have Gemini, I have Mary Jane, I have Smoke Sessions, and I have the Bad Side Zodiac the Earth palette. And for me, it would definitely be between Smoke Sessions for a keep and Gemini for a keep. And I think I'm gonna go Smoke Sessions just because I like the Smoke Sessions. This is definitely not a palette that I'm creating like just one look with, but I freaking love the green shimmer shades in here. They are so punchy, so metallic, and just special. The shade Mean Green is such a beautiful green shade, so unique to my collection. So if I can only keep one for Melt, we are gonna keep Smoke Sessions, which is also crazy to say because when I first got this palette, I thought about decluttering it. I just was not a fan. I thought the mattes were really hard to work with, really hard to blend, and I just like wasn't into this palette as much as I am now. I definitely like green eyeshadow a lot more than I like now than I did back then, but kind of weird to think about, or crazy to think about. All right, next up, this is gonna be so tough. We've got Danessa Myricks. So we have the Danessa Myricks Groundworks palette, which I use every single freaking day for my brows. So would make sense to keep that one. Then we have the Danessa Myricks Lightwork Volume 3, which kicked off my love and obsession for Danessa Myricks shadows. So this holds a place near and dear to my heart. Then we have the Volume 5 eyeshadow palette, which most recently launched. It has the most amount of shades, I believe, that she's released. It is so beautiful, and there are so many fun shades in this palette that I do love. But I think if I could only keep one, I'm kind of shocking myself with this, and I actually think I would keep the Volume 4. And like, this isn't the one that I said I was going to declutter. I feel like now thinking through, if I was going to declutter, it'd probably be Volume 5. And the only reason I say that is I feel like this one has the most just shifty shades This has a little bit more selection in terms of, or just a little bit more variety. It feels a little bit more, I don't want to say rainbow, but it feels like there's the most options in terms of color. Now these 4 shades in the center, there are 2 water activated shades, which I know is not going to be everyone's cup of tea, but I've actually had fun playing with those in the past. And then you have these 2 shades in the center, which are really quite chunky and definitely more for like an editorial look, not going to be like they're very flaky. But I have a pan in this palette. Actually, I have a pan in the shade Divinity, and I love the shade Trance. It's like a really, really beautiful, like bluey purple shade, like perfect for Vikings football season. I also love the shade Awakening, as well as these greens up here. And Danessa Myricks also sells these shades individually, so I could just purchase the one eyebrow shade individually to use every single day. So I think if I could only keep one from Danessa Myricks, currently it would be the Lightwork Volume 4. Next up, we have Glaminatrix, and this one is a literal no-brainer. So I have the Glaminatrix Nocturnal palette. I have Rich Romantic, which is really beautiful. Glaminatrix really knocks it out of the park when it comes to their like special shades. They're the smoothest texture I think I've ever felt in a shadow. Here is my Sugar and Spice. I did swap out a couple of the matte shades for Colourpop shades just because I wasn't a huge fan of the original Color Story. Then I also have their 6-pan Holiday Fairy Lights palette, which is a 6-pan all metallic shadow palette. And then if I could only keep one, at 100% would be my Nearly Natural palette. I freaking adore this palette. It's beautiful. It's come traveling with me every single time I've traveled out of the state since purchasing this palette. It is a palette that I feel extremely pretty in. The mattes are more buildable, so they're really easy to work with, and I don't feel like I have to be like super concerned about ruining a look right off the bat with the mattes in this palette. But the metallics are so punchy on the lids, and I love a really sparkly metallic, so I adore this palette. This is hands down the one I would keep from Glaminatrix if I could only keep one. Moving on to Unearthly, I have the Resurgence palette, which was in collaboration with Heather Austin. Admittedly, I have not yet finished testing this palette, so shame on me because I've had this for quite a bit now. Then I also have, when they were Alien Cosmetics, I also have the Not Normal palette, which I believe they still sell on the Unearthly site now. This is what this one looks like. Then I have the Sorcerer's Smoke palette, which looks like this, a very, very beautiful neutral, like neutral with a twist sort of palette. I love the pops of green, but also you can just do like a really beautiful neutral look, but the metallics are so punchy and metallic, which again, I love. And then I have the Fall Magic palette, which is also so beautiful. It has a little bit more color, and this bottom row of shades, so special and unique. Unearthly also is a brand that really makes a special shadow. So for me, it would definitely be between these 2 palettes, and I think if I could only choose one, I would go with the Sorcerer's Smoke, just because I feel like it's more easy for me to wear this on a more frequent basis, on a more everyday basis. And I have been really loving like a brown, a natural brown look, and I can go warm or cool with a brown look and do a really metallic pop, and I would love it. So if I could only keep one from Unearthly, it would be the Sorcerer's Smoke. Okay, if I've moved, it's because I had to switch my camera battery out. Next up, we have Glamlite, and from Glamlite, I have the Ruh-Roh Reggae eyeshadow palette. I have the Kiss palette. I have Chocolate Martini. I have the Glamlite Ice Cream Dream palette. I have the Glamlite Cake palette. And then finally, I have the Scooby-Doo 2 eyeshadow palette. And for me, this one is really no question. If I could only keep one, it would be my Ice Cream Dream palette. Yes, this is a larger eyeshadow palette, and yes, it is really, really colorful, but this is so unique to my collection. These bottom 2 rows, I really do not have these vibrant, like neon pastel pops of color anywhere in my collection, and the quality in this eyeshadow palette is truly remarkable in my opinion. I also love the Glamlite metallic formula. It's really punchy on the eyes. This is just such a fun palette. So if I could only keep one from Glamlite, it's gonna go to the Ice Cream Dream palette. All right, then I have my Adept palettes, and from Adept, I have the Adept Heather Austin palette. So freaking beautiful. I have the Minka eyeshadow palette, which is a really beautiful kind of molten metallic sort of formula. I have the Plain Jane Remastered. I have the Ninhydrin eyeshadow palette, which I freaking love as well. And then I have the Adept Flying Fiddles eyeshadow palette, which is like their take on a neutral palette, which I also really love. Oh, this is so difficult. It's definitely between Heather Austin Ninhydrin and the Flying Fiddles. And I think it's so difficult. Okay, I'm narrowing it down to Ninhydrin or Flying Fiddles, and it really just depends on like if I want to do something fun or something neutral. But I actually think if I could only keep one, I'm gonna go with Ninhydrin. I would have other neutral palettes in my collection, and I truly feel like the special shades, like the formulas in this palette, are just so unique, so fun, so punchy, so shifty on the eyes that I would want to keep these in my collection. So we're gonna keep Ninhydrin and let the rest go. Okay, let's move on to Kaleidos next. We've got a lot happening from Kaleidos. I have the Kaleidos Futurism 6, 7, and 3. And then I also have the Flower Punk palette, which is such a fun, interesting, and unique palette that I actually really love and adore. I will say that I could do without these two like minty shades at the bottom. I'm not much of a mint girly, but I love the rest of this palette. Then I have the Escape Pod, which is like the palette that made me really start to fall in love with color. I have 3 pans in this palette. I really like this palette. And then I also have the Club Nebula palette in collaboration with Angie, which is also just such a fun, interesting color story. Definitely a lot of depth to this palette, but I also really love the like special shades in this palette as well. For me, it really comes down to the Futurism 7 Sashimi City, which is like one of my top, I think I included this in my top, couldn't remember if it's top 10 or top 15, but this is definitely in there. I love this palette. I think it's so beautiful, so easy to wear on an everyday basis. I love the 2 metallic, special, sparkly shades in here. They're so interesting and unique. I also really do love the Flower Punk palette, but I think for this one, I'm gonna go with Sashimi City just because I absolutely love these shades, especially like this is one of my favorite go-to neutral, kind of like warm peachy looks. It's a favorite look of mine to go to. So we're gonna keep Sashimi City because I'd be devastated to not be able to do that look. Next up, we have Ensely Rain, and most recently I did finally pick up the newest Cosmic Dreamer palette. I actually do have a code with Ensely Rain now, which is so exciting. So I'll pop it on the screen and it's always in my description box if you ever feel like buying from Ensely Rain and want to support my channel. Otherwise, honestly, your view is support enough, but just thought I would toss that out there. I haven't yet played around with this, but how fun does this palette look? I love the, like, I feel like it's like neutral with pops of color. Like it's still approachable, but definitely like there's color in here. So I'm excited to play around with this, but I will say I haven't played with that much yet. I also have the Flower Moon palette, which I have not finished testing, but I do already have a pan on the shade Dahlia, and I've used quite a bit of the special shades. The shade Bloom, I have been into like, kind of like today, like an orangey, like a bright orangey copper metallic, and that, I could have used Bloom today, and that also would have been beautiful. So I love the 2 rows of like special / metallic shades. Then we have the Cold Moon palette, which is the first Ensely Rain palette that I tried. For a cool toned palette, this could be my favorite. I love the range of mattes. We've got mauves, we've got like a sage green, we've got like a slate bluey silver, and then Ensely Rain holographic shadow. Just the different formulas that they have in their special shades are just honestly some of the best on the indie market and just on the market in my opinion. I have not had one shade in this palette that did not work for me. They're just so beautiful. So I love this palette too. And then most recently I finished testing out the Groovy Gardens palette, which is so fun. I love this palette too, and I love the like grungy mattes that are included in this palette. I actually originally thought I was gonna go with the Groovy Gardens, but I think I'm gonna go with Cold Moon, and the reason being is there's more special shades in this palette, and I just, for a cool tone look, this just offers variety that I don't necessarily have in other palettes throughout my collection. So I'm gonna go with Cold Moon from Ensely Rain if I had to choose just one to keep. That would also be devastating. Another brand that I would be devastated to have to declutter anything from is Bella Beauty Bar, which I also have a code with if you're interested in using. I get so excited about my indie brand codes, especially for indie eyeshadow that I like truly do love. So we have the Basic Witch eyeshadow palette, which is my first Bella Beauty Bar palette. So beautiful. Bella Beauty Bar is another brand. Their special shades, just the different textures and formulas that they have amongst their special shades are so unique, and just I love them so much. The shade Perfectly Wicked, Witch Please, Incantation, I freaking love. Literally all of them. I love this palette, and it's such a fun color story too. I love this like clementine orange. I like the bright pops of color. Bright pops of color just like make me happy. And there's something about this that's giving like Halloween witchy, but also giving like 70s vibes in the color, and I love that. Then I have the Dead Roses palette, which I'm happy to have in my collection, but this palette is just like not my personal color story, so this is not one that I would choose. Then we have the Angles of Illumination palette. I have a couple of my shades missing because they're currently in one of my like Z palettes because I was trying to get use out of this. I do really love this palette. I like that it is 16 of their special shades. Like, I'm cool with having like a companion palette at times when it's a brand who I love their special shades. I know that this looks a bit repetitive, and if you don't like blues, like this is not going to be the palette for you, but I've really enjoyed my time with this. I love both of these like blue brown shades. I really love the shade Sunlight, which is a really beautiful kind of green that is currently in a Z palette, but this is not the one I would choose either. It would be between Basic Witch and my newest from them, which is the Secret Garden palette. The other day I did a look using this top row, and I really loved the way that that look turned out. Now, I haven't gotten around to completing my testing process with this palette. Oh, this is a toughie. This is an absolute toughie. There's 5 special shades in here. There's 2, 4, 6, there's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 in here, so I'm getting double. Granted, this one is still bigger. There's greens in both. I do really like the orange in this. This one has a neutral row. It's so tough. It's so tough, but I think I'm going Basic Witch. Maybe my answer will change when I finish completing my testing process with this, but these 2 shades in this palette I love. Like, it might not look like you can do a neutral look with this palette, but like these 2 shades for like a fun orange summer look that's like orange, but still like you can make it neutral because you can really sheer this matte out. So fun. So we're gonna keep Basic Witch from Bella Beauty Bar, also my first palette that I tried from them, so very fitting. Okay, I also have all of my Kaja Stacks. I have 11 Kaja Stacks, and I haven't gotten around to trying all of them because they recently sent me a PR package with some that I hadn't tried yet. But if I had to just choose one Kaja stack to keep, it would be between Cold Brew, which is one of their newest. This is a really beautiful kind of cool toned trio, and then Peach Madeline, which is just a really beautiful peachy quad. So it really just kind of depends, like, do I want the peachy warm or do I want the Cold Brew cool? I'm gonna go Cold Brew. I absolutely love this metallic. It is one of those like chunkier, stickier textures. Not gonna be for everyone, but really punchy on the eyes, and definitely something that I love. And I really do love a cool tone look, especially like sometimes when I'm just like on the go trying to go really quickly. Like, this is like, these are the 3 shades that I'm needing in my life. So if I could only keep one Kaja stack, it would currently be the Cold Brew stack. Okay, next up we have Nabla, and from Nabla the only remaining palettes I have are my Nabla Glitter Lights quad, the Nabla Cutie Nude, looks like that, and the Nabla Read My Mind palette, which looks like this. I'll be honest, I'm not as impressed with the Nabla eyeshadow formula as I once was, and if I could only keep one from Nabla, I'd actually keep my Glitter Lights quad, just because I don't have an all glitter palette in my collection, and typically I don't love glitters, but these glitters adhere really nicely to the eyes, and when I want just a little something extra, I actually do really enjoy reaching for this. I am kind of considering decluttering both of these in my next palette declutter and my upcoming palette declutter, which actually has already gone up, so perhaps you'll have seen me declutter these, and then this will be the only remaining Nabla eyeshadow, eye product left. All right, then we have Too Faced. I have the Too Faced Italian Spritz palette, which looks like this. I have the Too Faced Pumpkin Spice palette, which looks like this. And then I have the Too Faced Born This Way Natural Nudes, which looks like this. If I could only keep one from Too Faced, I actually would just keep the Italian Spritz. I was so impressed with this palette. I thought this was such a fun color story. Neutral, like warm neutral with a couple pops of blues. There's definitely a range of different textures and finishes within this palette as well. And I just actually feel like Too Faced kind of knocked it out of the park with this one. It also has a faint scent of like an Italian spritzy sort of situation, and it just makes me happy to look at this palette, so I would keep the Italian Spritz. All right, next up we have Nars. From Nars, I have Nars Summer Solstice, Nars Climax. I have Nars Orgasm Rising. I have the Nars Suede 6 pan. I have the Stargaze as well as the Afterglow. I'm sorry that I'm not showing every single palette. And then I also have the Summer Unrated palette, and I think we all know, if I could only keep one palette from Nars, it would go to my first love of Nars, and that would be the Summer Solstice palette. This was my first Nars eyeshadow palette. This is what made me fall in love with Nars. I love this palette because it just has two matte shades. They're perfect for just creating like a warm brown crease. And then I love, especially like these two lid topper shades. It's a really thin, metallic, sparkly formula, and it is just stunning on the eyes. So this is no question, I would keep Nars Summer Solstice. Then we have Pat McGrath, and I have the Venus and Floors quad. I'll try and open all my Pat McGrath ones. All right, we have Venus and Floors. We have the Interstellar Icon quad. I feel like I've decluttered this and recluttered this numerous times in my collection or in my day. This is, I believe, the Sublime 6 pan, and mine is very, very messy, but I can't seem to part ways with this for whatever reason. Okay, and then I have, and of course, I don't know what all of these are called, so I'm just gonna hold each of them up. We've got that one. We've got this one. Ooh, I love my Brown Seduction. That was, I think, my first 10 pan from from Pat McGrath. We have the, I think that's the Divine Rose. We have, this one is for sure the Utopian Dream. Is it Utopian or Utopian Dream? Then I have Moonlit Seduction. It would definitely be between Moonlit Seduction and Bronze Seduction. Clearly a seduction is what I'm wanting. And I told you guys this is my newest favorite, but as I'm looking at these, I'm like, I do love the selection of mattes in this one better. I also love my green. I love the blue brown in this, but I think, oh, this one's so tough. I feel like any day of the week my answer may change, but I actually think today I'm gonna go with Bronze Seduction. I'm kind of just living for that green plus this red. I love this gold, and I do like these two mattes better than any of the other mattes in any other Pat McGrath. So I'm sorry for the whiplash, because I know I told you that Moonlit Seduction was my newest favorite from Pat McGrath, but if I could only keep one, I'm going Bronze Seduction. Final answer. All right, for Huda Beauty, I like to split it up between my Huda Beauty 9 pans and my larger Huda Beauty palettes. So for my 9 pans, I have the Nude Medium and the Nude Rich. Nude Rich has been recluttered into my life, and I swear I haven't reached for it once. Then I have the Wild Python, Wild Jaguar, and Wild Tiger. And finally, I have the Neon. And I feel like for me, it's between Neon, which I know there was like controversy surrounding the Neon palettes. I don't think they're like safe for the eyes. And then the Wild Tiger. And I do love this like duochrome shade in the Wild Tiger. I think I'm gonna go with Wild Tiger if I can only keep one. I do like this palette. It's kind of a unique little 9 pan to my collection. I don't feel like I have all of these tones. Like, I feel like the undertones of some of these mattes are a little bit unique to my collection. And like I said, I really love this duochrome. I also think this shade right here is a little bit chunkier, but still really metallic. And I like this shade on the outer like third of the lid. So if I could only keep one for my Huda 9 pans, it'd be Wild Tiger. All right, and then we have my larger Huda palettes. So I have the Pretty oh my gosh, Pretty Grunge eyeshadow palette. I have the Empowered palette. This one is so beautiful. Kind of different for what Huda's released. Also, Grunge was a little bit different. Then we have the Naughty Nudes eyeshadow palette. Also, just a really beautiful palette. I love the Huda. I love Huda's eyeshadows, but especially the 9 pans at times can be hit or miss. My first large Huda palette was the Huda Mercury Retrograde. This absolutely holds a very nostalgic place in my heart. But hands down, if I could only keep one, it would be the Rose Quartz palette. I love the romantic tones in this palette, and I think that the like ethereal special shades in this palette are truly just like top notch. I don't have things quite like them in my collection, and I just love this palette. Every look that I create with this palette, I feel like I go in with a vision and I get something a little different, but I'm always like even happier than I expected to be with whatever I create from this palette. So if I could only keep one from Huda, it would definitely be Rose Quartz. All right, we then have all of my Odin's Eye palettes, and there are so many. I honestly need to do a separate, like, I need to rank my Odin's Eye palettes. Ooh, but if I could only keep, oh, I didn't think this through before I started. Oh my gosh, okay, this would actually be so tough because I do love my Odin's Eye palettes, although I will say I've been frustrated with some of their mattes lately. I'm excited the sun's out though, so that I can go lay by the pool after this. Okay, I think I have it narrowed down to my top 4. So I have the Odin's Eye Stone and Rock palette, which looks like this. For a green palette, I absolutely adore this. I also really, really loved the Halloween collection, or the Halloween 2 palettes last year, both of them. I love the greens in this palette, and I love the like lighter, that's so tough. Oh, that's so tough. Then I also have the Merry Christmas palette, which I also really, really, really love. How do I actually choose? I think, oh, that is so tough. I actually think if I had to just keep one, it's gonna be the Stone and Rock palette. I love green eyeshadow, and this is just such a solid choice if I want just like a go-to green shadow palette and I don't want to be dipping into like multiple things. This, I can create one full beautiful green look with this palette. I love the shade High Spirits. It's such a unique green to my collection, so if I could only keep one from Odin's Eye, it would be the Stone and Rock. And that just means the only brand we have left to talk about is Natasha Denona. And for Natasha, I am going to split it up into the 5 pans, the large 129 palettes, and then all of my midi palettes. So if I could only keep one 5 pan, it would definitely be between the Mini Nude, right? Mini Nude, yes. Mini Retro. Both of these I love. I love the shade Galaxia. It's probably my favorite shade out of any of the 5 pans, but if I could only keep one, we know I'm keeping Mini Nude. I've repurchased this palette because my other one was so destroyed, and I love this 5 pan from Natasha, so we're keeping Mini Nude, but Mini Retro would be in a close second to that. And then for my large Natasha palettes, I do love the Biba palette. My Lila palette was my first ever Natasha palette, so it also holds a place near and dear to my heart, but I think we all know it's really no question that I'm keeping the gold. This is one of my all-time favorite palettes, so we're keeping Natasha Denona gold if I could only keep one large. All right, and then finally we are just to the midi palettes, and I think I have every midi except bronze, which I actually have the Alter Ego Canyon palette on today, which is a dupe to the Natasha bronze. Can you get Natasha bronze anymore? Maybe on the website, but I feel like I should round out my collection, but I don't own bronze. If I could only keep one, my top 3, I think, Natasha minis would be, oh, I do love Retro in My Dream as well, but I think my top 3 would be the the I Need a Nude, the Glam, and then the Yucca. I'm going with Yucca though, because I love a pop of green. I feel like some of these matte shades, again, are just like really unique to my collection in terms of undertone. And I just think this is such a fun take on a green grungy palette. So if I could only keep one Natasha midi, it would be the Yucca palette. And then I also just realized that I forgot about my Colourpop palettes. So I'll be right back. I'm gonna grab those too. All right, we're ending the video with Colourpop. I have the Colourpop Tinkerbell, Colourpop Going Coconuts, Colourpop Mandalorian. I have Cloud 9, Limoncello, Wild Child, Lil Ray of Sunshine, why am I still holding this one up? Club Cabana, Muppets, and Getting Fresh. And it would definitely be between the Muppets and the Limoncello palette. The Muppets palette is a really, really fun palette with fun pops of color. Really, really great quality. And again, I just like love the pops of color. I like how you can kind of follow the rows. I love the green row, and I love this bright like coral row. I love the shade Be Cool. It's just a really, really fun one. And so it's between that or Limoncello, and this is gonna be the second Limoncello palette that I save in this video. If I could only keep one from Colourpop, it would definitely be this one. This one has come traveling with me, I believe, just about every time I've traveled since owning this as well. I absolutely love this palette, and I haven't been able to shut up about this really since it entered my life. I love the shade Serenade. I love the shade Serenade for a really beautiful kind of metallic yellow. I feel like that shade's pretty unique to my collection. I also love Capri. Easy Peasy is kind of this like duochrome red green shade with like a bit of like a satin taupiness to it too, and I really love the selection of mattes in this palette as well. So my pick from Colourpop would be Limoncello, but after that, those are all of the palettes I would choose to keep if I could only keep one from each brand. I would love to know, what palettes would you save out of your collection? Also in the comments, let me know what other palette themed content you'd like to see from me. I love hearing your guys' suggestions, but that's gonna wrap it up for today's video. Thank you guys so much for sticking around to watch and for supporting me and my channel as well as Palette Week. I love you guys so much, and I will catch you in tomorrow's video. Bye.